Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most talked about hypothetical military questions of the modern era. Could NATO really take Kaliningrad in just a few hours? This small Russian enclave on the Baltic Sea has been described as one of the most militarized places in the world, a critical flashpoint that could ignite a much larger conflict between Russia and the West. In this video, we'll explore the geography, the military realities, and the potential scenarios that make this question far more complex than it seems. First, let's start with what Kaliningrad actually is. Sitting between Poland and Lithuania, Kaliningrad is a piece of Russian territory separated from mainland Russia by about 300 miles. It's Russia's only warm-water port on the Baltic Sea that stays ice-free all year, giving it immense strategic value. The city itself, formerly known as Königsberg, was once part of East Prussia before being annexed by the Soviet Union after World War II. Today, around 1 million people live there, surrounded entirely by NATO members. That means if a major conflict ever broke out between Russia and NATO, Kaliningrad would instantly become one of the first and most important battlegrounds. Now, when people say NATO could take Kaliningrad in hours, they're usually referring to its geographic vulnerability. It's isolated, cut off from the rest of Russia, and surrounded by countries that are part of the world's most powerful military alliance. On paper, that makes it seem like an easy target. Theoretically, NATO forces from Poland and Lithuania could converge on the enclave rapidly, sealing it off before Russia could respond. Some war games and military simulations have even suggested that NATO troops could seize key locations like the Kaliningrad airport, naval base, and communication centers in less than a day. But that's only one side of the story. Let's look at the other side, Russia's military posture in Kaliningrad. Over the years, Moscow has turned the enclave into a fortress. It's heavily defended with advanced anti-aircraft systems like the S-400, coastal defense missiles like the Bastion and Bal, and short-range ballistic missiles such as the Iskander, capable of carrying both conventional and nuclear warheads. These weapons give Russia a powerful anti-access area denial capability, meaning NATO would have a very hard time operating aircraft, ships, or even missiles near the region without being targeted. In short, any attempt to take Kaliningrad would immediately put NATO forces under immense fire. Furthermore, the Iskander missile systems in Kaliningrad can strike targets as far away as Berlin, Warsaw, and Stockholm. This creates what many analysts call a bubble of control that could disrupt NATO's movements in the Baltic region. Even if NATO had the element of surprise, the risk of Russian escalation, and especially nuclear escalation, would be extremely high. That's one reason why most experts believe the idea of taking Kaliningrad in mere hours is more fantasy than reality. Still, let's entertain the scenario. Suppose NATO decided to act decisively in response to a Russian aggression elsewhere, say in the Baltic states. In that case, a rapid offensive to neutralize Kaliningrad might make military sense. NATO's local forces, particularly the US and Polish armies, have practiced large-scale exercises designed for precisely these kinds of operations. Air power from bases in Poland, Germany, and the Baltic region could provide overwhelming support. And with the element of surprise, NATO might be able to overwhelm local Russian defenses before reinforcements from mainland Russia could arrive. But even in that scenario, a few hours is an exaggeration. It might take days or even weeks, depending on the resistance, the weather, and the political will to sustain an attack of that magnitude. Let's also not forget the political cost. Capturing Kaliningrad wouldn't just be a military operation. It would be an act of war against Russia, one of the world's largest nuclear powers. Moscow would likely see it as an existential threat. The use of tactical nuclear weapons to defend the enclave is not impossible. In fact, Russian military doctrine explicitly allows for nuclear use in situations where the survival of the state is at stake. That means any NATO assault could risk triggering a much wider and potentially catastrophic conflict. But why does Kaliningrad matter so much in the first place? It's because of its strategic location. From there, Russia can project power deep into the heart of Europe. Its naval base houses part of the Baltic Fleet, capable of threatening NATO shipping and maritime supply routes. Its radar systems and missile networks cover much of northern Europe. And for Russia, losing Kaliningrad would mean losing its foothold in the Baltic, which would be both a symbolic and strategic disaster. In Moscow's eyes, defending it at all costs would be non-negotiable. NATO, on the other hand, views Kaliningrad as both a threat and a challenge. The enclave acts as a forward outpost that could isolate the Baltic states in a crisis. Military planners often worry about the so-called Suwalki Gap, the narrow stretch of land between Kaliningrad and Belarus. If Russia ever moved to close that gap, it could effectively cut off Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania from the rest of NATO. That's why the alliance frequently conducts military drills in the region, practicing scenarios where rapid reinforcements would be needed to defend the Baltics or counter a Russian move from Kaliningrad. The question, then, isn't just, could NATO take Kaliningrad in hours? But at what cost? Militarily, NATO has the strength to isolate and eventually capture the enclave. But politically and strategically, it would be playing with fire. A lightning strike might succeed tactically, but the escalation could spiral out of control almost immediately. The presence of nuclear-capable missiles in Kaliningrad changes the calculus entirely. Every military decision would have to be weighed against the risk of nuclear retaliation. There's also the human factor. Kaliningrad isn't just a military base. It's home to hundreds of thousands of civilians. Urban warfare would be devastating, and humanitarian consequences would be severe. NATO's leadership has repeatedly emphasized that its focus is on deterrence, not aggression. Taking Kaliningrad would go against that principle unless Russia had already initiated large-scale hostilities elsewhere. Even then, the operation would likely aim to neutralize its weapon systems rather than occupy the territory permanently. So could NATO do it? Technically, yes, if the alliance committed massive resources, had political unity, and accepted enormous risks. But could it do it in just a few hours? Almost certainly not. Russia's defenses, the threat of escalation, and the sheer complexity of such an operation make that timeline unrealistic. The reality is that Kaliningrad is designed to be a trap, one that would make any NATO offensive a gamble of the highest order. In the end, the question isn't just about capability. It's about wisdom. Military power can seize territory, but managing the aftermath, avoiding nuclear escalation, and preventing a global war are entirely different challenges. Kaliningrad may be small, but it holds the potential to spark one of the largest conflicts of our time. And that's why, for now, both NATO and Russia continue their uneasy standoff, building up defenses, running exercises, and hoping that this particular scenario remains nothing more than a thought experiment. So while it's an intriguing question, the idea of NATO taking Kaliningrad in hours belongs more in the realm of war gaming and geopolitical speculation than in reality. The costs would be too high, the risks too great, and the consequences too unpredictable. For now, the best strategy remains deterrence, ensuring that neither side ever has to find out what would really happen if war came to Kaliningrad. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you found this breakdown interesting, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into global military and geopolitical topics, and let me know in the comments, do you think NATO could actually pull it off, or would it be a disaster waiting to happen? Until next time, stay informed and stay safe.